Alright, so before we dive into KnockoutJS, I just want to have a quick refresher on JavaScript, jQuery, and JSON. Or not really JSON, but JavaScript objects. Alright, so really simple. If you guys already know all this stuff, feel free to skip ahead. But for the people that don't know it or just need a refresher and aren't, pros at this stuff. Alright, so what we're going to do, we're going to create an HTML document. Alright, so I'm using Sublime Text, so I can do HTML tab, and it's just going to give me the base structure. Alright, and let's just say example JS refresher, and I'm guessing that most of you know HTML, so I'm not really going to go over HTML. Alright, so what we want to do is we need to include jQuery. Alright, so we're going to get the jQuery CDN. And a CDN is a content delivery network, and it's just a link that it'll provide jQuery for us externally, so we don't actually have to download it and include it. Alright, so I'm going to grab that. And if you're working locally, you'll want to add HTTP:/. Alright, and we're not going to be using Knockout in this video, but just to show you, you can get the Knockout CDN as well, which is right here. Okay, and to include that, you want to do script src, paste that in there, and you need a closing script tag. Alright, so this is all we need to be able to use jQuery and to be able to use Knockout, although we won't be using Knockout. Alright, so let's start off with something really easy. So we'll start off with variables. So let's go to the body, and we're going to put our script tags at the bottom. And you're going to want to spell it right. Okay, so I'm sure most of you guys know this, but to create a variable, we're just going to say var, and let's say first name equals, and then we're going to set it to a string of John. Alright, and to check this, we can do a few things. We can do an alert. Okay, so we can say alert first name. Alright, let's save that, and we'll go ahead and run it. And you can see it gives us a JavaScript alert, and it gives us the string John. Alright, now to comment that out, we can use a // and we can create another variable. Let's call this one last name, and we'll set this one to doe. Alright, now if we want to join these two variables together into a variable called full name, we can say first name, and then we need to concatenate on a string because we want to have a space in between the two. Alright, so we want to do a plus sign and then quote, single quote, and then we can put whatever we want in here, any kind of text or HTML. We're just going to have a space. And then on the other side, we're going to attach last name. Alright, and now we'll go ahead and alert the full name. Alright, so now we get John Doe. So that's the basics of variables. Next thing, let's talk about JavaScript objects. Alright, so we'll create an object. Let me just comment this out. Let's create an object called person, and we're going to set that to these curly braces, and then inside here we can have different fields for our person. Alright, so let's say first name. First name we'll say is Steve. Put a comma, then we can have another field. We'll say last name. We'll say Sanders. And let's say age. Alright, and we can have a number as well. Okay, notice that the number, or the integer, there's no quotes. Alright, so how do we access, let's say we want to get Steve's last name. How do we access that? Well, we can say alert, and we know that the object is person, so we can say person dot, we want the last name, person dot last name. All right, so we'll save that, reload, and we get Sanders. So we're just accessing it using dot notation, and we can go even further and we can have embedded objects. So let's say we have address, and we can set that to be another object where we can have street. Okay, so we'll say 30 Main Street, and you might want city, say New York. All right, so now if we want to get the city that Steve lives in, we know we got to say address. Actually, we want to get rid of last name. We want address and then dot city. All right, and if we go and reload, what are we doing? Address dot city. Let's take a look at the unexpected identifier 23. Oh, we don't have a. We need a comma here. And we get New York. All right, so you can go as deep as you want, and you can keep accessing, you can keep digging down using this dot notation. All right, so what if we want a group of objects or an array of objects? All right, so let's go ahead and create a variable called people, and we're going to set that to be an array of objects. Okay, so we need these square brackets, and then each object is going to be formatted just like the one above. Okay, so we'll just do first name, say Dawn, last name Smith. All right, so we'll just keep it at first and last, and then we'll add a couple more. All right, we'll change these. We'll say Brian, Donovan, and Carlos, whoops, say Carlos Diaz. All right, now what if we want to get this guy? What if we want Brian? So what we can do is we'll say alert. Okay, we want to start with people, and then we're going to say people, and then we need the index. All right, so this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. Arrays always start from 0. So if we want Brian, we're going to say people1 dot, let's get his first name. All right, and if we reload that, we get Brian. All right, so what if we want to loop through these and display each name? Okay, so let's get rid of that. To do that, we're going to need to do a loop. All right, and there's a lot of different loops we can use. When we're using Knockout, we're going to use knockouts for each loop, but for now, let's just use a JavaScript for loop. All right, so we're going to put in here for, we're going to set I equal to 0. All right, we're going to say as long as I is less than people dot length, and length is just a JavaScript property. It's going to give us the number of people, so we'll get 3 from that. So as long as I is less than 3, and we want to increment, so at the end we're going to say I++. That's just going to bring I up 1. And then what we want to do here is let's do a console log, because if we alert, it's going to keep alerting us, and that's kind of annoying. So we'll just console log, and to get this, let's actually, we'll say people, and then we need our index. Remember, we used Brian and we did people1. Well, right here we're going to put in the I, and that represents whatever I is at that current iteration. All right, and then we'll say dot first name. All right, so if we save that, reload, and then if you look at the bottom here in the console, it's spitting out all the first names. All right, and we can concatenate onto that. Okay, we'll put a space in the middle, and then we can say people I and then dot last name. And now if you look at the bottom, we have their first and last name. Now what if we want to take it a step further and actually list them inside of the window, which is probably what you'd want to do. I mean, this isn't very useful, but what we need to do is create an element, all right, in the body. Let's create a UL, unordered list, and we'll give it an ID of people. All right, so what we want to do is we want each person to be in here inside of some li tags. All right, so we're going to use jQuery for this. Okay, so we'll just comment that out. And while we're still in the loop, we're going to grab that ID people. Okay, that's the UL. And then we want to append some HTML. So we're going to use .append. All right, and then in here, we can actually put our HTML. So we just want some list items. And we're going to need to put JavaScript in here. So we're going to concatenate with the plus signs. And we're going to say people I dot first name. And we want the last name as well. So we're going to like that. I know this can be a little confusing because this is narrow. So let's open that up. So we get the space and then plus plus, and then we need to go back to HTML. So this will be people I dot last name. All right, so let's take a look at that. And now you can see we have the names listed in the browser. And we used a standard JavaScript for loop here. We can also use jQuery to loop through stuff. So let's comment that out. Actually, let's comment this whole thing out. All right, and then to use jQuery, we can do $.each. All right, and then we can pass in the object people, and then a function. Actually, I shouldn't have did that. It doesn't go like that. Yeah, we have the function, and then what we're going to do is same thing we did here. I'm actually going to copy that whole thing. All right. And except the one thing that I'm going to change, wait, actually we have to pass in index. I haven't done a standard jQuery each loop in a while. So index value, and we can trade this I for index. Same thing here. All right, and if we reload, we have the same thing. All right. Now, what if we want to add to this array? All right, so I'm going to show you where Knockout really comes in handy. All right, so let's go up here and create, what do I want to do, an input. And let's give it an ID. We'll give it an ID of first name. Actually, let's give it a type too. We want type text. All right, and we'll also do one for last name. And then we'll have a button. I'm going to give this one an ID of add person. All right, let's take a look at that. Okay, so now we have two inputs and a button. And let's create an event handler for that button. Okay, so it has an ID of add person. So what we'll do is we'll say ID add person, and we're going to give it a click event. We're not going to be doing much of this in the course. I'm just trying to give you an example of where Knockout may help us. All right, so add person dot click function. Now to add to an array, we can say people dot push, and then we can pass in an object, and we'll say first name, and we're going to set that equal to whatever we input in the first name field. So we're going to say ID, first name. All right, and then we're also going to need the last name. Okay, we'll grab the ID, last name. Okay, so push is it's a function we can use to add on to an array or an object. All right, so let's save that, and then let's go ahead and reload. And let's see, unexpected token. What did I do? Push. Oh, I don't have a closing curly brace. I think that's it. Okay, so if I say Jane Thompson, okay, and I click add, nothing happens. It doesn't add here. All right, but if we go and we say console.log people, and let's go ahead and reload, and we'll say Jane Thompson and add, it's still not showing here. But if we go down here and we look at the last one. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to add .val. Okay, this first name, it should be .val because we want the actual value, not just the element. So we need to reload. Okay, if I look down here, now we can see first name Jane Thompson. So you can see she's been added. Okay, she's added to the people object, but not up here. All right, that's because that happened after the UI was already generated. Okay, so the user interface was already created. This was already put out, and then we added it, and then we see it down here because the console.log came after the push. So what Knockout will help us do is it updates the UI when we update something called an observable, which is basically just a function that can give us whatever we put in it. In this case, it would be a person. All right, so when we update this, if we're using Knockout in the correct way, then Jane Thompson should just pop right in here automatically without having to do any page refreshing or anything like that. And that's just one of the things that Knockout can do really well. Now, can we do this with jQuery? Of course we can, but it's a lot harder. There's a lot more code. It's a lot more complicated, and it's just unneeded. All right, so I just wanted to give you just a quick JavaScript refresher, and along with jQuery and some JavaScript objects. And now we can get into Knockout. So I will see you in the next section.